Welcome to Togetherness, the second proper episode of our podcast. We'll be talking to Tammi. We'll talk about all things mental health and issues that affect you, especially in this very strange time that we have at the moment. But first, we've got a news story that we wanted to talk about, especially when it comes to the pandemic and even before the pandemic, how mental health has been treated, and this is quite a shocking news story. So I am going to hand over to Emily to do the news.
Antidepressant use has hit an all-time high as the coronavirus pandemic takes its toll on the nation's mental health. With counselling services moving online, experts believe millions of people may have missed out on early intervention, meaning they now face more severe mental health issues later down the line. Doctors have said online help is inappropriate for some patients, while others may have been reluctant to seek face-to-face help or put extra pressure on health services. It has led to more than 6 million people being prescribed antidepressants in the 3 months leading up to September, the highest figure on record. Calls to mental health helplines have also gone up, and the list by The Guardian have found. The Deputy Campaign Director at the National Mental Health charity Rethink told the papers there was a big risk of antidepressants being prescribed with no support, adding that such medication should go hand in hand with therapy. Mental health campaigner Natasha Devon said that many people were simply being sent away by doctors, adding, "People are going to their GPs with symptoms of mental health illnesses and are being sent away with a bag of medication, having been put on an 18-month waiting list."
An 18-month waiting list? That's a very long waiting list.
I can concur that is accurate, as I've been waiting over 18 months for my own referral, so that is not just a statistic.
And I mean, we'll be talking to Tammi about that a bit later in the interview, but the use of medication just being an easy way to treat mental health, do you think that that's something that's true, or what are your thoughts?
Well, dealing with my own mental health issues, I went and took the step to speak with the doctor about it, and she said, "Look, we want to put you on this medication, but we would also like cognitive behavioural therapy to go alongside that, etc." And yeah, it never came around really, still waiting. And, the transition of going on to medication or changing medication for antidepressants, etc., it's very difficult. Like, we've mentioned before that it can make you feel worse, and, you have no support during that period of time, and it can be very difficult.
And these medications have so many side effects as well. Sertraline being one of them that I was on, and they take a while to get in. They cause a chemical imbalance, and around about 14 days for that imbalance to settle down, but it can make people feel worse. And it's crucial that there's therapy alongside it. Medication is fine. There's no harm, but you shouldn't be ashamed of taking medication, but we need to get talking. We need that proper support. For me, I feel, when I started engaging in therapy, when I was finally given that option, that opportunity, my life changed. I started to open up, talk about it more, and it didn't make everything better, but it released a lot of my feelings, and there was just so much emotion that was held up that finally felt like I could just let go of a lot of the trauma that was causing many of my breakdowns.
I think as well, it's a case of self-actualization, actually
That's
acknowledging, acknowledging, your traumas or your issues or the battles that you're facing, because when you don't speak about it, it builds up in your head. And then when you do have that opportunity to release it, it does confirm to you the issues that you're facing. And sometimes as well, it's nice to have that bit of reassurance that, you know, you're not going crazy, you're not overthinking, you're not overanalyzing or making it a bigger problem than it is. Just having someone there to listen is really beneficial.
Listen, encourage, be kind. Thank you very much. And we'll be talking to Tammi a bit later about that as well. And you know, there's a massive waiting list. There's a big crisis in the UK. We've got an underfunded mental health system, an underfunded NHS. Hopefully, from the pandemic, the government will soon realise that it's a very important service, something that needs to be addressed, and there'll be some change from this.
Hopefully so.
Well, let's go. Now we're going to go into the interview with Tammi. This was amazing, very inspiring individual. And yeah, have a listen. Tammi, thank you so much for joining us. So you're our first guest on our Togetherness podcast, your first episode. So
incredible. Thank you for having me, and thank you for everything that you're doing.
Thank you so much as well. Like you do, your Instagram's full of such inspiring posts and stories, and I was so inspired by your story and your background that you sent to me, and why you do what you do, and how you became inspired to make change and help and inspire people. So you're 36 years old, originally from South Africa.
That is correct. Sunny South Africa.
And you're residing in London at the moment, aren't you?
I am, yes.
Yeah, so can you tell me a bit about yourself?
Well, okay, sure. Where do I start? Like you said, I'm 36. I'm from South Africa. And I have spent most of my life working in pharmaceutical sales. I really enjoyed it. It was a great chapter of my life, and it's opened wonderful doors for me. And that's kind of where I learned about illnesses, mental and physical illnesses. And I just saw firsthand how many of these illnesses are treated. Not getting down to the root of the problems, and just masking many of the symptoms that people experience. So that's also inspired me to go on a search to see how we can get to the roots of all these problems, start changing small things, and just better people's lives by doing that. And then while I was working for the pharmaceutical company, I came across a piece of land that was inhabited by, it must be about 60 or 70 families, very, very impoverished families, no running water, no electricity or anything like that. And I just saw these children living in the worst circumstances that no children should ever have to live in. So I decided to start a little community soup kitchen, and that ran every Friday afternoon after work. So after I worked this high-flying corporate job, I would take off my shoes and run into the bushes and serve these little children a hot meal and play soccer with them. And and that is, I can honestly say, was the most influential part of my life, learning lessons from these little kids that had nothing in their lives. The things that I was stressing about on a daily basis were nothing compared to what these children were going through. And that's when I found my passion for helping people. It fulfilled me on levels that I've never experienced before in any other job. So I decided to make that a career.
That's
and
amazing.
Here I am, 6 months into the journey. Living in London. My gran was British, so I do have an ancestral visa. So I incorporated my love of travel and wanting to make a difference and immigration all together during the pandemic.
Wow, and I bet that was a tough time to do all of that as well.
It was, but I feel like it was the best time because all the distractions were gone. There was nothing else keeping me there. So for me
I
it was the
loved
best.
how you described the pandemic itself, a global pause. Like, I thought that was such a true and inspiring way to kind of describe all of this. It's a very difficult situation for many at the moment. Lots of uncertainty, lots of anxiety and depression. You've also suffered with a lot of anxiety for most of your life,
Hmm.
and you've experienced some quite horrible things as well. And the way you described lockdown, when you said when lockdown hit, you saw it as a global pause. You took the distractions you used to ignore your inner signals, and it was time to practice what you preach. And you got yourself into therapy, confronted your trauma, and
Hmm.
it was the hardest thing you've done, but it was the most beneficial. Um, I can certainly relate to that. I think the pandemic, it kind of put things into perspective for a lot of people, but for you, like, what has it taught you?
What has it taught me? That we need to sometimes pause in our lives to listen to those signals that are coming from within. As much as it sounds hoo-ha and all hippie like, that's exactly what it felt like to me. So maybe if I can just take a little step back and also just explain why I suffered from anxiety my whole life.
Yeah, please
Um,
do.
I had a traumatic childhood, which in hindsight explains that drive I had to change that little community's life. Because once you've suffered in your life, you develop a deep sense of compassion. So in hindsight, I can see why I was so driven to work with those children in that community and that type of thing. So I suffered anxiety because I never went back to those traumas that I had faced. I never tried to process them. I did and I didn't in a way. I did slight work, but I never did the hard work, going to a professional, going through therapy, talking about it on a daily basis, that type of thing. And to be honest, it's the first time I'm talking about it to complete strangers as well. So
It's
it's a
amazing.
bit strange for me. Um, and then I'll take another step back as well. And when I made the decision to change careers, another deep trauma happened in my life. My father committed suicide, um, and that
So
just
sorry.
it's okay. Thank you very much. That also just made me realize how sad our world is at the moment, and how many people are going through such hard times and just need help and need to be okay to talk about it. So yeah.
How, if there were people in a similar situation to you at the moment, like, what's the biggest bit of advice, and what techniques have you used that have got you through these really difficult times which you've experienced? And especially lockdown now, when people can't do very much and they're confined in the four walls, the anxiety builds up. For some, it's a safe haven, and then the fear of going back to a normality as well, with those
Mm,
anxiety levels facing the world. What advice would you
definitely.
give to others?
Well, the latest lesson that I've learned is that we've got to understand that there's nothing wrong with us. Anxiety and depression are just signals from our central nervous system that there's something that's not right. Something needs to be regulated, something needs to be changed. It could be a thought pattern, irregular thought patterns, unproductive thought patterns. It could be some substance abuse that's driving this overhaul of our central nervous systems. There's something that you need to figure out what's going on. And I've also been there. I've used unhealthy coping mechanisms in my life, and I can honestly say they're not productive. So I looked for healthier coping mechanisms. Therapy, of course, is my number one go-to. You need to talk about these things. We need to get comfortable talking about these things and identifying emotions in ourselves and understanding where they're coming from. And then small healthy tweaks, going for walks or just